You and I are living in a world of imagination, a world of consciousness. And we are the observers in the world of consciousness. We are the points of awareness, observing imagination. And as these points of awareness, observing imagination, observing consciousness, which is truly observing ourselves, what we see in the world of the 3D, what we experience from moment to moment as we are living our lives, is produced by our belief about who we are, our belief about what the world is, our belief about imagination itself. Now, this is not a new idea. This is actually a very, very old idea. This is an idea that is so old, it actually is older than time itself. This is an eternal idea. The ancient nature of this idea, meaning that it is truly an eternal idea, means that really it is not an idea that is arrived at through cognitive processing. It is not an idea that is evolved towards through the development of things on the outside. We don't build buildings on the outside using architecture to reach this awareness. This awareness is something that is built in as an innate aspect of consciousness itself. And this awareness has been available to all conscious beings for eternity. This is an eternal awareness. Because this awareness has been available since before the experience of time itself, there have been many ancient teachers, wise men and women of the past who have reached this level of awareness, this level of knowing, this level of embodying the wisdom that we are living in a world of imagination. We are living in a world of consciousness, and that our thoughts, our actions, our feelings, our perceptions, the stories that we tell are shaping our world, are shaping consciousness, are shaping imagination itself. These ancient teachers reached this level of awareness, and they began to understand, to stand under the acceptance of this divine truth. Now, some of these sacred ancient teachers encoded their wisdom in the form of parable, stories which are easy to accept because they seem to incorporate characters and people, places, things and events that we can relate to from any state of consciousness. But these stories embody a very deep level of wisdom. These stories, when truly interpreted, when really opened with the eyes of understanding, convey a deep and sacred mystic wisdom. They convey an awareness that consciousness is the only reality. That's first, that's primary, and also an awareness that we, as consciousness, as points of consciousness, as perspectives on the whole, we have the power to choose the reality field that we will bring to life through our awareness of it. Now, this is the truth that sets us free, because really, if we can choose, if we have the power as individual creators to choose the reality field that will become real for us, there is truthfully nothing on the outside that can affect us at all. There's in truth nothing on the outside that can control the life that we are living. There's in truth nothing on the outside that can limit our potential. There is in truth nothing on the outside that is not simply a reflection of our own state of being, our own state of awareness. Earlier this week, I was paging through one of my favorite magazines, and the magazine showcases beautiful things in the world. The theme of the magazine is luxury without compromise. So it's literally an assortment of the most beautiful, luxurious things in the world. And as I was paging through this magazine, I found a full page advertisement for a bronze sculpture. Bronze sculptures. There's an artist who has created this bronze sculpture. Now he's selling it among the finest things that modern day planet Earth has to offer, according to this magazine. And this bronze sculpture, I'm going to describe it and I invite you to craft it in your mind's eye for yourself. This bronze sculpture depicts a man carving himself out of a large slab of granite. So there's this large, blocky slab of granite, and coming up out of the top, the chisel and a hammer, carving his own body out of this giant slab of granite is this man. And the title of the piece is Self-Made Man. Self-made man. This bronze sculpture was rather striking, not just for the medium of the artistry, this giant 20-foot sculpture of a man carving himself out of a giant boulder of rock. It was striking for the symbolism, for the significance of the message that it conveys, because each and every human being on planet Earth is in truth self-made. Self-made. And the only difference between one human who is self-made to the next who is self-made is the level of awareness that that human embodies as to the nature of this being the truth. What is my degree of awareness of this truth? How much do I accept that I am self-made? The nature of this world of imagination that we're living in is that of illusion. And by that, I mean, it is very easy, particularly if you are not embodying a level of authorship in your awareness, it is very easy to look at what is manifested in the world of form and flesh around us and say, that circumstance is responsible for me. That made me. My parents, earthly human parents, they made me the way that I am today. My boss, that guy, that lady, whoever over there, they're responsible for the level of success that I'm having in my career. And that can be positive or negative. Oh, they made me, my mentor made me the amazing person that I am today. Or that boss, that person over there kept me limited. They kept me small. They pushed me down. They sat on my potential. They forced me to be less than the person that I desire to be. I'm not making money because there's a recession, right? The economy has made me who I am today. These are all stories that the illusion presents to us as invitations. And when we are not embodying the role of being the author of our reality, it is very easy to accept these invitations from illusion and say, yes, the mirror is making me. but this timeless, sacred wisdom, older than time itself, timeless, eternal wisdom that transcends time, tells us something different. The eternal awareness that transcends time tells us that I am the cause, that I am always self-made. And even when I choose to believe that the mirror is making me, it is my choice to believe that is making me, and I am still self-made. In Sunday Mystery School, this is the wisdom that we bring every single week to feed with nourishing soul food that state of awareness that says, I am self-made. I am self-made. In Neville Goddard's original Masterclass, Lesson 4, the title of Lesson 4 is No One to Change But Self. Referring back to this image of the man carving himself out of stone. Each stroke of the hammer and chisel is changing himself. That's exactly what you and I do from 1 millisecond to the next. Our state of awareness. Who do we believe that we are? What are we accepting and consenting to as being true? What or who do we believe is making us? In our earlier Sunday Mystery School lessons, we covered an earlier portion of this No One to Change But Self lesson from the Masterclass. And one of the key ideas that Neville presents is this story from the Bible where Jesus, which is fourth dimensional thinking, which is the embodiment of I am self-made at the highest level, highest, purest level. That state of awareness turns to the disciplined qualities of mind that are anthropomorphized as the disciples and says, who do men say that I am? Which is another way of saying, what does the world think of me? Or what do other people say about me? Or who do people who are not me think that I am? And those disciplined qualities of mind, the disciples, they say, some people think that you are the reincarnation of a great person of the past. Maybe you are a great prophet come again, or maybe you are Neville Goddard reincarnated, or maybe you are this or that. And then enlightened reason asks a second question. Who do you say I am? This second question, this one, is asked to self. Who do I say that I am? Who do I say that I am? Each one of us answers this question with our lives. We answer this question with our lives. This question is not asked once. This question is asked without ceasing. Who am I? Who am I choosing to be? Who do I believe that I am? And when I believe that I am the self that is creating my reality, when I believe that I am self-made, when I believe that I am the operant power of my reality, when I believe that I am the embodiment of imagination in human form, when I believe that I am consciousness experiencing myself, that is when I am free. That's when I am truly free. and I can rise and transcend above the world of illusion, and I can choose to be the human being that I desire to be. This question is asked without ceasing. This is really the conversation that dominates our awareness in every moment, even when we aren't consciously aware of it, even when thoughts aren't swirling in our mind, asking the question, who am I believing that I am right now? Even when that's not an actual train of thought occurring in our conscious awareness, the question is still there. And we answer the question by how we react to what happens in our world. So when something happens on the outside and we move into a state of defensiveness, as though we are being attacked in some way, and we forget that we are self-made, we have now answered that question. We said, I am made by that scenario over there. I am made by that circumstance over there. This fact of my life is making me. In the very next moment, we can catch that thought. We can catch that thought of victimhood or that thought of that thing over there is making me. We can catch that thought and we can say, no. Let me re-answer this question. And let me say, I am the cause. And let me reshape and remold my awareness of myself first into alignment with this idea of I am the cause. And then let me reshape the circumstances appearing in imagination, which is my world. Let me use my imagination to reshape my understanding of what is happening in the world based on the premise that I am standing under, which is I am self-made and I am the cause. That's the place where I am standing. I have now been given dominion over the circumstances, because remember, that's the promise given to us by consciousness itself. Wherever the sole of thy foot shall tread, that I have given unto you. So when I choose to stand with the sole of my foot, understanding, this is a state of awareness. When I choose to stand and embody the state of awareness that says I am the cause, that is what has been given unto me. I am now the cause. And as being the cause, I can now change. I can now reshape. I can now be the potter at the potter's house. And I can realize that I've been sitting at my wheel and that I shaped a vessel and I saw that it was misshapen and it was spoiled. And so what did I do? I remade the vessel as it seemed good to the potter to do. But going very deeply into this narration project that I have on my YouTube channel for this Neville lecture titled Test Yourselves. Test yourselves. And in this Neville lecture, he talks about the telephone technique. The telephone technique. The basic premise of the telephone technique is that we can choose to revise in real time any news that is coming into our awareness. Okay, so the specific examples he gives is an audience member taking a phone call from a friend, and the friend stating a desire. I would like to be XYZ. And then stating all of the reasons in the world of Caesar, all the situations, circumstances, people, places, and events that would prevent them from reaching their desire. So this audience member who's on the phone hearing the desire and all of the reasons why it cannot be, chooses to change herself. Chooses to change herself, not change the other person by saying you shouldn't think that way. To change herself. To change herself from being the one who heard a friend in need and in a state of lack and limitation, to being the one who heard that her friend had achieved her objective. And how did she do this? She created a new memory. She created, using her imagination, a new memory. She created a new memory by sitting in the silence after the phone call was complete and hearing the phone ring again. Sitting in the silence and in her imagination, hearing the phone ring again and picking up the phone, and here it is, her friend. Same voice, different story. She heard a different story within the silence of her own being. And she heard her friend say, I wanted to be this thing, and guess what? Now I am. I became this thing that I wanted to be. And this audience member, self-made, reshaped her world through the understanding that everything is self-made. And she moved from being the one who heard another in lack to being the one who heard another had achieved their desire. And she changed the world by changing herself. We're going to continue this morning with Neville Goddard's original Masterclass, Lesson 4. And this is part 3. And of course, this lesson is titled, No One to Change But Self. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick up with Neville's words, and we're going to weave all of these ideas together. Neville says, I, by descending in consciousness, have brought about the imperfection that I see. In the divine economy, nothing is lost. We can't lose anything except by descending in consciousness from the sphere where the thing has its natural life. To interpret this paragraph, what Neville is saying is that there is a place in consciousness where everything is perfect. There is a place, there is a level of awareness, there is a reality field in consciousness where everything is perfect. This is another example of this would be the Garden of Eden, this metaphysical state of awareness where everything is perfect. We're in the most beautiful garden imaginable. And only by our descent in consciousness from that level of perfection has anything in our world become imperfect or appeared to be imperfect. Now, it is important to point out at this stage in the conversation that our descent from that original level of consciousness is part of the divine plan. It's on purpose. We descended in consciousness on purpose to live in these reality fields of our own creation, because we are the prodigal sons and prodigal daughters. We're the ones who leave our Father's house to go have an adventure in the world. And it is through that adventure that we are able to fully experience what consciousness is. We have to become these individual creators, and we have to see what it's like to have the mirror of the world reflect back to us our state. So this is by design. And yet, as we rise to a level of awareness where we realize that we are self-made, we can also become aware of the dynamics of the game of life, the dynamics of this imaginal world in which we are living. And that's what he means when he says the divine economy. So in the divine economy, meaning in the field of all possibilities, that one field that we all are that contains all possible realities. It's a field of reality fields. It's a field that contains everything that is growing these little individual reality fields that we move into and move out of and then move into again, depending on our state of consciousness. So in that one field that contains all things, everything is perfect. Nothing can be lost. And it is only by choosing a different reality field that there can be any type of illusion of loss. Okay, so that's what he means when he says descending in consciousness from the sphere where that thing has its natural life. Neville gives a Bible verse that illustrates this point, and the Bible verse is from John 17:5, and it says, "And now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was." This is enlightened reason, that state that Jesus Christ represents, speaking to consciousness itself, to that one divine reality, and saying, in that field of all possibilities, I know that everything exists. Allow me to transcend this individual little micro reality field in which I am living in now, and allow me to see that big picture. Allow me to expand my awareness to being aware of the whole. Neville says, as I ascend in consciousness, the power and the glory that was mine before I entered this little reality field where something appeared to be lacking, that power, that glory returned to me. And then I say, as enlightened reason says, I have finished the work thou gavest me to do. That work is to return from the descent in consciousness, from the level where I believed I was the Son of Man. Meaning, do I believe that I am human, or do I believe that I am consciousness having a human experience? Which do I believe? Because at a lower level of consciousness, I believe I'm just simply human. I can return. This is the work that I have to do. I can return from the level of believing I'm merely a human to the sphere where I know that I am one with my Father, which is consciousness itself, and that my Father is God, the field that is all that is. I know beyond all doubt that there is nothing for man to do but change his own concept of himself, to assume greatness and to sustain this assumption. If we walk as though we were already the ideal we serve, we will rise to the level of our assumption and find a world in harmony with our assumption. We will not have to lift a finger to make it so, for it is already so. It was always so. You and I have descended in consciousness to the level where we now find ourselves, and we see imperfection, but only because we have descended. When we begin to ascend, while still here in the three-dimensional world, we will find that we move in an entirely different environment. We have entirely different circles of friends, entirely different world, while still living here. And then we know the great mystery of the statement, I am in the world, but I am not of the world. Instead of changing things on the outside, I suggest to all that they identify themselves with the ideal that they contemplate. What would the feeling be like were you of two pure eyes to behold iniquity? This is such an important question as we contemplate the state of being self-made. What if we were of two pure eyes to behold iniquity? It's a very biblical way of saying, what if our awareness was so pure that we could not see anything other than perfection? What if that was our state? What if we assumed our ideal? And what if our ideal was that we never left the Garden of Eden? What if our ideal was, I am living in a world of perfection? What if my level of awareness, that fourth dimensional reasoning, the Christ mind, what if I were so completely associated with the Christ mind that that became my default state? What if to me, all things were pure? And what if I refused to pass judgment and condemn anything? As I contemplate this ideal state and identify myself with it, I will ascend to the sphere where I, in that state of higher dimensional reason, the Christ mind, that is where I have my natural life. That is my source. That's the place from which I came. That's my home. Neville says, you are still in that state where you were before the world was. And the only thing that has fallen is your concept of self. The only thing that has fallen is your concept of self, self-made. You see the broken parts, which are not really broken. You are seeing them through distorted eyes, as though you were in one of those peculiar amusement galleries where a man walks before a mirror and he is elongated, that he is the same man. It's the fun house of mirrors. Or he looks into another mirror and he is all big and fat. These things are seen today only because man is what he is. Neville says, toy with the idea of perfection. Ask no other person to help you, but let the prayer of the 17th chapter of the Gospel of St. John be your prayer. Appropriate the state that was yours before the world was. Neville says, we must know the truth of the statement, none have I lost, save the son of perdition. None have I lost, save the son of perdition. Son of perdition is embodiment of the idea of the belief in loss itself. So I have lost nothing except the idea that anything can be lost. That is what has left my awareness as I rise to the level of the Christ mind, as I rise to the level of the fourth dimension. The only thing that I lose is my belief that something can be lost. And for their sake, I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. That's John 17:19. There is no one to change but self. All you need to do to make men and women in your world holy is to make yourself holy. You are incapable of seeing anything that is unlovely when you establish within your own mind's eye the fact that you are lovely. It is far better to know this than to know anything else in the world. I think all of us listening to this in this moment would agree with this statement. It is far better to know this than to know anything else in the world. This is the most important thing anyone could know. It does take courage. Actually, it takes boundless courage. Because many this night, after having heard this truth, will still be inclined to blame others for their predicament. If I am truly self-made, I cannot blame another. But it is easier to blame another. It is easier to point fingers at the mirror and say, that's the reason why I am the way that I am. That over there made me. It's easier. But the desire for freedom must transcend the desire for easiness. We must desire to grow more than we desire to remain comfortable. This is why Neville says it takes courage, actually boundless courage. It's not for the faint of heart, it's for the courageous of spirit. To say, to declare with authority, with authorship, I am self-made. I make myself. Neville says, listen to these words. No man can come to me except the Father which hath sent me draw him. It's John 6:44. I and my Father are one. That's John 10:30. A man can receive nothing except it be given him from heaven. It's John 3:27. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life that I might take it again. No man taketh it from me. I lay it down of myself. That's John 10:17 and 18, and that's Jesus, enlightened reason, fourth dimensional thinking, saying, I am self-made. No one can take anything from me. I make myself. You did not choose me. I have chosen you. My concept of myself molds a world in harmony with that concept and draws others to me to tell me by their behavior who I am. Earlier this week, I had another episode live stream of Neville and Chill, my good friend Shweta. And the topic of Neville and Chill recently has been practical everyday manifesting. How do we take these ideas out of the realm of the philosophical and the existential, which is, I mean, really, how can you can't listen to this and not say, this is existential. This deals with my existence. This deals with the very nature of reality itself. That's like really big ideas. So that's Sunday, the really big ideas, the soul food, the nourishing. And then on Tuesday nights, we have Neville and Chill. We take these ideas and we make them super practical in a live stream, discussion with the chat, and so forth. We were talking in this most recent episode how to resolve relationship problems using imagination, how to remake myself in a way that shapes my relationships to be harmonious. Very practical conversation because all of us have relationships. And in this conversation, we were talking about how the behavior of others, like really when we're in relationship with another, any type of relationship, friendship, coworker, romantic partner, like whatever it is, any other person in our world is a very fast mirror to our state, a very fast mirror. Because some things in our world, they are slow mirrors, meaning that, let's say we assume a new state of wealth. When we begin to live and operate and, really anchor our awareness into I am wealthy. And then over time, that wealth begins to build and grow and become more and more real. It's like a slow mirror in the world. The world begins to shape and change itself until now we're living this world of wealth. But with people, it tends to be much faster, much faster. With people, it tends to be whatever state I'm in, I get an instant reflection from that person right back at me. I can walk into a place, and if I'm carrying a storm cloud about me, people treat me negatively because I'm carrying the energy with me, and they're just the mirrors reflecting it back to me. And of course, vice versa. Someone else in the world objectively could be having a terrible day, but I walk in knowing that I'm self-made and I'm carrying with me the light. And that person is going to instantly reflect back to me my light, right? Very fast mirrors. And so that's what Neville means when he says, the behavior of others tells me who I believe I am. It is my self-concept that is shaping the behavior of others. The most important thing in this world is our concept of ourselves. When we dislike our environment, when we dislike the circumstances that we seem to be living in, when we dislike the behavior of other people, there's only one question that we can ask. Who am I? Who do I believe is making me, and who am I? And the answer to that question, that is what is the cause of our world, because we are shaping ourselves out of that stone of granite with each strike of the hammer against the chisel, which is each momentary iteration of our self-concept, this holographic identity that we carry with us as our state of being. What are the components? What are the parameters of who we believe that we are? And that is what is being reflected. And that's also the only thing that we can change. Neville says, if you do not condemn yourself, there will be no one in the world who will come and condemn you. If you are living in the consciousness of the ideal, there is nothing to condemn. To the pure, all things are pure. Now, I would like to spend a little time making as clear as I can what I personally do when I pray, what I do when I want to bring about changes in my world, when I want to change myself so that my world changes. Neville says, you will find it interesting and you will find that it works. No one here can tell me that they can't do it because it is so simple. Anyone can do it. We are what we imagine we are. The technique is not difficult to follow, but you have to want to do it. You have to authentically want to do it. You cannot approach it with this lackadaisical mindset of, I'll try it. No, you must want to do it. You must say, this is for me. Because the mainspring of action is desire. Desire is the mainspring of all action. So, your first step is, what do I want? I must define my objective. What do I want? For example, suppose I wanted to be elsewhere. This very moment, I really desired to be somewhere else. I don't need to leave through the door. I don't even need to sit down. I don't need to do anything but stand right now where I am and with my eyes closed, it's an important point, my eyes closed, assume that I'm actually standing where I desire to be standing. Then I remain. I remain in that state until it has a feeling of reality. Were I now elsewhere, I could not see the world as I now see it from here. The world changes in relationship to me as I change my position in space. So by closing my eyes and moving my awareness to another place, with that moves my perspective on the world. As I stand here and I close my eyes and I imagine that I am seeing what I would see where I desire to be, I remain in it long enough to feel it to be real. Now, the duration of time that this requires may be individual, and with practice, I have found that the duration shortens. So at first, if you're unaccustomed to moving your awareness in the fourth dimension, outside of the 3D, which is measured by your senses, if you're unaccustomed to doing so, it can take some practice to connect to that fourth dimension of awareness and find a new reality field to stand in using your awareness. But with practice, it becomes easier and easier. And of course, Neville was the embodiment of a master of this ability. He continues, he says, I cannot touch the walls of this room from here. He's standing in the middle of the room. But when you close your eyes and become still, you can imagine and feel that you are touching a wall. You can stand where you are, in the middle of the room, and you can imagine that you're putting your hand on that wall. To prove you are really there, in your mind's eye, put it there, slide it up, and feel the wood. You can imagine you are doing it, even without leaving your chair or moving at all physically, using your mind's eye. You're connecting to the fourth dimensional awareness and moving your awareness anywhere. You can do it. You will actually feel it if you become still enough, meaning going into the silence. Remember when I was telling the story of the telephone technique, the woman would sit in the silence and hear in her mind's eye the phone ring again, right? So entering the silence is a key aspect of this technique. If you are still enough, and you have to be intense. You have to be intense. This is where the skill of concentration, this is one of those things that is a complementary skill. I've actually taught courses on attention and concentration at the School of Imagination because it's such an important skill, how to sharpen and concentrate the energy, the focus of our energy, so that we can do things like this more easily in our awareness. If you become still enough and become focused enough, if you become intense enough, you can move your awareness in the fourth dimension and in your imagination, bring sensory vividness to a place where in the 3D you are not. I stand where I am and I allow the world that I want to see to enter physically, to come before me, meaning my awareness, my imagination, as though I were there now. In other words, I bring elsewhere here by assuming that I am there. This is an important point, so important that Neville actually asked the audience at this point, is that clear? It's a little bit of an abstract concept, but hidden within it is the secret to creating reality. Is it clear? He also says, I let it come up. I don't make it come up. This is a fine distinction here in the technique. It's that place already exists. And so you're opening your awareness to it rather than forcing it using a strength of will. It's like using the analogy of a radio receiver, an FM dial. You're tuned to one station, and then you tune and you find another station. The station was there the whole time. You didn't force it to come out of the nothingness. That other station was broadcasting the whole time. You're just simply moving the position of your awareness, tuning the frequency until you find that clear signal. Using stillness and the intensity of focus, you find that clear signal. You're not creating something new. You're tuning into a frequency where all things already exist, and you're choosing a specific thing to experience in that field of all possibilities. Now, I make this point because from a higher dimensional perspective, we're actually rising in dimensional awareness, moving to a new state through that rising of awareness, and then setting back down our awareness into the 3D in a new place, but it's still an imagination. So it's literally taking that floating point of awareness that seems to be in a physical body right now, and then moving it and having another experience, and then coming back and reoccupying this space. So there's a little bit of nuance about what's going on here. You don't need to understand all of the metaphysics of it, but it is important to understand particularly what the instructions here are and that they serve a purpose. So the silence, the stillness, and the closing of the eyes, and the focus of intention, attention and intention, that is what is going to lift the awareness so that we can move it to a new place, to a new state. If I want to manifest a person, if I want to experience a person physically, if I want their physical presence, I imagine that person is standing before me and I touch them. All throughout the Bible, it says things like this. He placed his hands upon them. He touched them. If you want to comfort someone, what is the automatic feeling? You put your hand on them. You can't resist it. You meet a friend, the hand goes out automatically. You either shake hands or you gently put your hand on their shoulder. It's how you can know physically that someone is real. You touch them. You can do the same thing in your imagination. Suppose you were now to meet a friend you had not seen for a long time, or a friend you are very fond of. What would you do? You would embrace them, would you not? You would put your hand upon them. In your imagination, bring him close enough to put your hand upon him and feel him to be solidly real. Restrict your action and imagination to just that one thing. Remember, focus. In the silence, focus and intensity. One thing, just that action. Shaking the hand, placing the hand on the shoulder, making something physically real and interacting with it in the fourth dimension. Neville says that's all you have to do. And just by doing that, you will be amazed at what happens. From then on, he says, things begin to move. Your dimensionally greater self will inspire in everyone the ideas, the actions necessary to bring you into physical contact. It works that way. Going back to this analogy of the telephone technique, because it's so important that we really make this practical and give real-world examples of how this is done. This woman, sitting in the silence with an intensity of focus in her imagination, hears the phone ring again. She picks up the phone in her imagination. She hears the voice of the friend telling her that her friend is now experiencing what she desired to experience. And that imaginal act is changing the self because it's adding a new memory. Because now, rather than finding her friend in a place of lack and wanting, she is now using her power as the observer of her reality. It's the power that collapses, the field of infinite possibilities to a definite outcome. She operates the power as the operant power, and she hears the friend telling her a beautiful story, that she has received, that she has achieved what she desires to have, receive, and achieve. And in so doing, she has now made a new memory. She's changed herself. Now that act has implications and resonates throughout the entire whole. Okay? Throughout the entire whole, the entire field of all realities reverberates with the power of that act. And now, circumstances, situations, people, places, things, and events all respond. They all jump to react to the change that was made within herself. She did not have to call the person administering the test and say, can you please take it easy on my friend? My friend really wants to pass this test and become XYZ. Can you just make sure that she does? She didn't have to do that. She didn't have to tell her friend, hey, make sure you study really hard and then you'll get it. She didn't have to do that. She didn't have to set the date or the time for the test. She didn't have to deal with any of the minutia. She simply changed herself, and all of the situations, circumstances, people, places, things, and events realigned themselves in harmony with the change that was made, because that hammer and the chisel shaped the reality that is self. And so the mirror shifted to reflect back the new reality of the self. Neville says, every day I put myself into the drowsy state. And this is the portal state of awareness that we have taught extensively in our previous episodes of Sunday Mystery School. It really is the key skill to practice as a creator of reality, as an author. Entering the portal state of awareness where the subconscious mind is very receptive. We're able to have that intensity of focus. It's the drowsy state. We've talked about this extensively. Neville says it's very easy to do, but habit is a strange thing in man's world. Habit is not law, but it acts as though it were the most compelling law in the world because we are creatures of habit. And so Neville says what he does as a habit is he has an interval every day where he places himself into the drowsy state. For example, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He says, do you know, if you start this habit where you lay down and put yourself in the drowsy state every afternoon at 3 p.m., from then on, at that moment, every day, as if on cue, you will begin to feel drowsy. And he says, just try it for 1 week and see if I am not right. Neville says, sit down for the purpose of creating a state akin to sleep, the portal state, as though you are sleepy, but don't actually fall asleep. You want to get into drowsiness, but retain conscious control of your attention. Okay, so you're a human being. I'm sure you've fallen asleep before. You've probably passed through what we call the hypnagogic state, which is the state where the body falls asleep and the mind stays awake. And then there's a certain place where the mind can be awake and still in control of attention. And there's a certain place where you begin to slip or float, and you kind of lose that conscious direction of the mind, and you just kind of start to see, whatever. It could be literally anything could come before your mind's eye, and you kind of lose conscious control over it. Okay, so we want to stay on the part of that sleepy state of awareness where we can still control what we're thinking about and the images that we're projecting. Relax, but retain control of your thoughts. Okay, and Neville says you have to try this every day for 1 week, and the best practice is to do it at the same time each day. He says, you choose the hour when you will be free. You choose the time in your schedule where this will be appropriate for you. And he says, do not do it lightly. Don't make this choice lightly, because it will become a habit and it will become something that'll become a part of your everyday reality. So he's like, be selective about this. There is another way of doing this, and Neville's going to share that now. He says, in this second way of praying, I sit down in the most comfortable armchair imaginable, or I lie flat on my back and relax completely. You must be comfortable. Do not be in any position where the body feels distressed. Always put yourself into a position of ease. That's the first stage. Start of prayer, Neville says, is knowing what you want. Then, construct in your mind's eye an event which would imply that you have realized your desire. Neville says, I have always let my mind roam on the many things that could follow the answered prayer. Then I single out a specific one that is most likely to follow the fulfillment of my desire. Okay? One simple little thing, like the shaking of a hand, embracing of a person, the receiving of a letter, the writing of a check, whatever would imply the fulfillment of your desire. So this requires a specific type of thinking, because you're literally going to time travel to a place in your timeline using your imagination, using your awareness. You're going to move over the event in your timeline to where the event has already happened, and you're going to think, and then what? I received what I wanted to receive. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. I got what I wanted to get. I am who I want to be. Now what? What is the logical thing that comes next? There's probably an assortment of answers that can spring to mind, but you want to choose the one that is the most likely. So choosing from a probability thinking. Okay, so like, let's say that I desired a promotion at work. Yes, I could get a handshake. Yes, I could get my partner could hug me and say, great job. Maybe there's a party, right? But like, maybe the one thing that is basically guaranteed is that I get an email from HR saying, hey, you're in this new position now and you need to fill out some paperwork or whatever, right? Like, just as an example, there's one thing that is basically guaranteed to happen once the event has occurred. That's where you go in your mind's eye. Okay? That's where you go. And just there, just one place, just to the thing that is most likely to occur, just there. And you visit that in your mind's eye and you make it real and you live the scene in this drowsy state of awareness. Whatever implies the fulfillment of your desire, you experience it now. After you have decided on that one single action, You sit back in your comfortable chair, you lie down on your back, you close your eyes, and you enter into this state that borders on sleep, the hypnagogic state. The minute you feel this lovely, drowsy state, or as Neville says it another way, a feeling of gathered togetherness. Love that. Neville, such a poet. Feeling of gathered togetherness. If you've ever been in this state, I think you know what he's implying when he says this. There's not really anything I can add to these words here. Feeling of gathered togetherness. It's exactly what it feels like. You feel in this place of gathered togetherness. You could move if you really wanted to, but you don't want to because you're so comfortable. You could open your eyes if you wanted to, but you don't want to because you're so comfortable. You get that feeling. And that's how you know you are in the perfect state to pray successfully. In this feeling, it is easy to touch anything in this world. You take that simple little restricted action, which implies the fulfillment of your desire, and you feel it, or you act it out. You enter into the action as though you were the actor and you were playing the part. You don't sit back and see yourself from a third-person perspective doing it. You do it. You take the lead role in that scene and you act it out. With the body immobilized, you imagine that the greater you that is inside the physical body is coming up out of it and that you are actually doing the proposed action. If you are going to walk, imagine you are walking. Don't see yourself walking, feel that you are walking. If you are going to climb stairs, feel that you are actually climbing the stairs. Don't visualize yourself doing it, feel yourself doing it. If you're going to shake the hand of another, do not visualize yourself shaking their hand. Actually put that person in front of you in your imagination. Reach out and shake their hand. But don't move your physical hands. It's your greater hand. It's your imaginary hand. It's your multidimensional hand. It's your fourth dimensional hand that is shaking that person's hand. All you need to do is imagine you are doing it. You stretch out in time. What you are doing, it does seem to be a controlled daydream, but it is actually a real act in the greater dimension of your being. You are actually encountering an event fourth dimensionally before you encounter it here in the 3 dimensions of space. You don't have to raise a finger to bring that state to pass. Neville gives a third way of praying. And he says, this is simply to feel thankful. This is actually how I enter into this state every single time. I kind of bring these techniques together. So I do the portal state of awareness to practice imaginal acts, but I always start that portal state with heart coherence, which is this practice of opening the heart through gratitude and appreciation. So it's a melding. It's an eclectic version of these techniques. So Neville introduces it as saying, my third way of praying is simply to feel thankful. If I want something, either for myself or for another, make my physical body immobile. I go into that state akin to sleep, that portal state, and then I just feel happy. I feel thankful. The thankfulness implies the realization of what I want. They say gratitude is the state of receiving. So in addition to, maybe a handshake would follow that, me getting what I desire, also a feeling of gratitude and appreciation would follow that which I desire. So let me go ahead and feel it now in my imagination, because that is connecting to the end result. This is the idea of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. What is the feeling of the wish fulfilled? It's heart coherence. It's gratitude, appreciation, compassion, care, and love radiating out of your emotional body. That's the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's a literal state of awareness. If you have questions about heart coherence, I encourage you to join the channel Mastermind. We practice it together. We talk about it all the time, and I've built a whole series of videos that have guided meditations in this state and have also explored the state so that you can learn to create it for yourself reliably and really become a master at entering and living from this place. Neville says, I don't need to do anything to make this happen. It already happened. My feeling of the wish fulfilled implies it is already done. Neville says all of these techniques are usable, and you can feel free to modify them to fit your individual personality. But I must emphasize the necessity of introducing or inducing the drowsy state where you can become attentive without effort. Now, why is he emphasizing the necessity of this? Because this is something all mystics have taught since time immemorial. This is a mechanism built into the operating system of these 3D bodies. You know, we're in 3D human bodies for a reason, to really experience this level of creation, the 3-dimensional level of creation, where our consciousness hardens into matter and can be interacted with using senses. Okay, so that's like part of the design of this game of life. And the inner door to rise above the game of life is found by going within, right? I am the cause, I am the source. There's no one to change but self. And access to all that I am is never found on the outside. It can only be found by going in. So I go in, and there is literally a door, and that door is a state of consciousness. State of consciousness that allows the 3D to fade and allows our consciousness to rise to a higher level of perception, a higher dimension of perception. And that state is best accessed through the portal state of awareness, which again, we've taught at length in Sunday Mystery School. Each human being passes through the portal state of awareness 2 times per day, just by nature of being human. So we're always experiencing it already. Once when we wake up, we pass through the hypnopompic state from our sleeping consciousness, which is a certain level of brainwave states, usually either theta or delta, passing through that portal state of awareness, which is the alpha theta cusp, to a level of waking consciousness, which is typically around the beta brainwave state. And then at the end of the day, as we're passing back to sleep, we then again pass through the doors of our consciousness back down into the theta delta region of sleep. And as we're going there, we pass through that alpha theta cusp, which is the hypnagogic state of consciousness, where we're able to still control our awareness, which is the alpha part of that alpha theta cusp. And then the theta, which is the dreamy, dreamlike access to other dimensional realms where we can see things and experience things. If you've really done this portal state of consciousness to the point where you really feel you were there, that's that theta state really coming alive. Because in that theta state, I mean, that's the state where we can have dreams that feel so real that we wake up and we're like, was that really a dream? That felt so real, right? That's our brainwave states making an imaginary place real for us. Okay, so we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it on purpose with intention, right? We're doing it with an intensity of focus. And this is a sacred mystery school technique that, was reserved for initiates for thousands of years. So it's like, this is, we talk about it. Now it's in the commodity of thought of, if you go online anywhere, it's all over YouTube, it's all over all social media. It's like just, normal part of our discourse, but that doesn't mean that it's any less powerful than it has been the entire time, even when it was shrouded in mystery and hid behind the doors of ancient mystery schools. This is the secret to creating individual reality. It's just now we've graduated as a society to a level of awareness to where we can talk about it plainly and openly, and we can practice it. Okay, so that's where we are now. So Neville says this is important. You must use the drowsy state. Now, that being said, even the telephone technique that I spoke of earlier, and that video is coming on my channel, by the way, if you're curious about it, it's releasing later today, actually, the telephone technique video. So in that video, she didn't put herself in a sleepy state of consciousness. She simply sat in the silence and used her imaginal ear to hear the phone ring. Okay. But still, Neville is saying, I have to emphasize the necessity. So you have to practice with the portal state if you're really going to be a student of the mysteries. You have to practice with it. And also, you can graduate to a level of proficiency to where you can also learn to revise in real time, which is what the telephone technique implies. The telephone technique implies a fluidity and a comfort with the language of imagination to where you are in real time able to change the unlovely to the lovely. Okay, so that's mastery of these ideas. But all students of consciousness, all students of the mysteries, need to practice with that portal state. Okay, you're only selling yourself short if you do not. Okay, so step 1, practice with the portal state. Step 2, get really good at it. Step 3, learn to revise in real time. Neville says the most important idea to praying successfully is this: a single sensation dominates the mind. A single sensation dominates the mind. It's bringing all of your power of focus and intensity on one single sensation. That is how you know you have prayed successfully. What would I feel like were I now who I want to be? When I know what that feeling is, then I close my eyes and I lose myself in that feeling, in that sensation. In the mastermind on my channel here, we talk about this as an ascent. We talk about this process of losing yourself in a single sensation as an ascent in consciousness, an ascent in awareness. It's this idea of catching a mood. Okay, so we entertain the mood. We pour our attention into that mood to allow it to grow until it dominates our awareness. And we actually do this together in mastermind sessions where we will bring up a topic and then find the mood. And then through a guided meditation, practice catching this mood together until that mood crowds out all other ideas in consciousness and becomes the dominant mood in relationship to that topic. And this is the idea of the ascent. With this compelling invitation to practice for ourselves, I think we're going to leave it here for today. There is more to this part of the lesson, but we're going to come back to it next week and continue. I think it's very important that we end this lesson in particular with this emphasis on the power of practice, because to move any further in the lesson, potentially diffuse energy from it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn to the Zoom room. I'm going to invite any members of the mastermind who have any comments or contributions to contribute. And then we're going to close with this invitation to practice.
Hello.
Hi. Or who do we have? Is it Orlena?
Angie.
Oh, Angela. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Right. So thank you so much for today's lecture and the previous ones that I've been privileged to attend. I'm noticing the reward of repetition. Like the more you attend these classes, the more it builds up and you have things being repeated that then helps to create neural pathways in the brain and the acceptance of this information, especially because we all know we've been programmed since childbirth. So this is helping a great deal. Thank you so, so much. Now I've got a question to ask. So this pertains how to resolve relationship problems with imagination, which is from last week, right? So I have a friend who is child-free and does not intend to get married, doesn't want to get married, doesn't want to have children, not because she hates children, but she just wants that lifestyle. But she's a Muslim, comes from a Muslim family. So she was asking me, what do I do? Because she has no desire for that. And she's wondering how to resolve this with her parents who will wear her down. She's not, she doesn't attend classes like me here. So I don't know how to help her with that, being that she hasn't, for me, I can see what I would do to work towards that. And I try to keep calm. But for her, she would want some actionable steps. So I was wondering, how can I help her as someone who knows a little bit of this and that?
Yes. Beautiful question, Angel. Thank you for surfacing that. So there's really two ways to approach this question. It's actually two different dimensions.
Right.
So on one dimension, you have a friend that you desire to help, and you want to empower that friend to use her imagination for herself to shape her own reality. And in another dimension, you are the person who is hearing that you have a friend who is suffering in lack from having what they desire. Okay, so there's two levels to this. So we're going to approach it from both levels because I feel like that's the best way and perhaps the most beneficial way. So on the level of your friend and coaching and counseling your friend from a place of love and friendship, and how to deal with it. It's literally what would the feeling be like if my parents made it clear to me that they accept the decision that I have made for my life? What would
Right.
that feeling be like? Because right now she's experiencing the opposite of that. She's feeling this pressure. Okay. So let me free myself from that pressure and let me find that feeling. And just even saying it out loud, I can start to catch like there's this overwhelming, like this really intense and beautiful feeling of unconditional acceptance. Like, hey,
Yes.
we love you, we respect you, we want you to live your best life. And if this is the decision you're making for it, we support you in that. So it's like this, very beautiful connection. So what would the feeling be like?
Mhm.
And then constructing the event, would her mother say something? Would her father and mother sit her down and say, look, my child, as much as we would love to have grandchildren, we've really been talking about this, and we accept your decision for your life, and we just want you to be happy, and just know we love you no matter what. We will never pressure you to make another decision, right? Something like that's okay. So like if that's the scene, or maybe it's something else, right? Like it's getting really clear on the feeling, and then from that feeling, the scene should be quite natural to connect to. It's like, oh, well, naturally, this is what would happen. If this feeling were, if I was experiencing this feeling not just in my imagination, but in the physical, in the real 3D. Okay.
Right.
That's one level. The other
Mhm.
level is you have the power to shift this whole situation. So you have the power to go into the silence and hear that
Wow.
telephone ring again, and then
Mhm.
hear your friend's voice saying, hey, remember that situation with my parents where they really want me to get married, and they really wanted me to have children, and they were like really thinking about their grandchildren. Well, they called me back and they said,
Mhm.
you know what, we just love you and we're just so grateful that you're our daughter, and like we'll respect you no matter what and we don't want you to feel any pressure from us, like. And then so you're hearing your friend say she got what she wanted, and hear your friend feeling happy and feeling grateful, the situation is now resolved. And then you, being the hearer, are now feeling happy and grateful because now you have heard, right, that your world is conforming to the ideal.
Great. Wow, that is quite deep. That's very profound. Thank you so, so much. I appreciate it.
You're so very welcome. Thank you for the beautiful question and contribution. Orlena?
Yes, I always have questions.
Yes.
Okay, so I wrote them down. So I said, so being at the fourth dimension state, as the fourth dimensional state, is everyone, is that everyone's default state, is being at the fourth dimension?
In truth, with a capital T, yes.
Okay.
Or higher, right? Higher, right? Like, I mean, in truth, the capital T, of where we're all the dimensions. Each and every single one of us is all of the dimensions. That's the compound unity, right? Like the crystal Buddha fragment into 1,000 pieces and then reassembled. So in truth, with the capital T, yes. And our personalities tend to be shaped in the 3D, if that makes sense.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's both, yeah.
Okay. All right. So now another question.
Mhm.
How are no oh, what are techniques to strengthen my focus?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. So practice, obviously. That's like the
Yes,
one thing,
exactly.
practicing focus. Okay. So there's a couple of very practical things that I'll say. And then because you're in the mastermind, you're asking me, now I'm thinking, oh, this can be we can do some sessions on it in the group for the mastermind.
Okay.
It's literally what it's for, is to take these ideas to the extreme. Okay, so a couple practical ideas is to begin to prioritize the state of focus in your life. Okay,
Okay.
so for example, there are certain behaviors that through repetition teach us not to focus. Okay, so certain social media apps come to mind where the topic is changing every 10 to 15 seconds. It's
Okay.
not helpful to build a resilient state of mental focus. So I, for one, choose not to engage with that form of media because I find that it teaches me to scatter my focus rather than to remain focused. Just a personal lifestyle decision. I'm not passing any condemnation.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because focus is important to me, I'm choosing, to practice it on a regular basis. And so one of the things I do is I cut out things that that kind of encourage me to lose focus. I find it from a very practical standpoint, and this may be, I'm not going to say controversial, it's too dramatic of a term, but like some people be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. People be like, I don't really know what he means by that. I find reading, literally reading a book with my phone off in a way,
Yeah.
right? In a quiet place, like maybe I'm on my patio, in nature, just that focusing on a book. It's a single story, it's a single idea, like whatever, like focusing on and reading in particular, because reading is what they call a cold medium, right?
Okay.
So it's like I'm just getting words, and then the world of the idea or of the character, if it's like a novel or something like that, the world is created by my imagination
Yes.
in this cold medium. Okay, so reading, as opposed to like movie series or TV or whatever, where it's a hot medium, meaning the world's created for me and I'm just a passive observer for the most part. Okay, so reading is one way.
Out loud or just reading in general. You can do either or.
Either or, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know you have a son, right? So like even that practice of reading out loud, but like doing it, like if you're reading to someone, just as an example, reading to Omri, you would focus on the story. So no distraction, right? So like, your phone would be away. It'd be like, this is just a time where we just focus on this. So you're setting the intention that I would like to get better at focus and concentration. And then you start to shape your life to where now that's a value that you're bringing to life through your behavior.
Okay.
Right? So you kind of set. Now, there are also meditative practices that assist with focus. And I want to acknowledge in this space that, not everybody's wired the same way. I mean, there's like, the term neurodivergent comes to mind. Some of us have brains that operate different than others. So some of us might find this idea of focus. We might even have a different definition of what it means to focus. Like I want to acknowledge that any experience can exist. So for some people, these ideas will work. For other people, you might need something entirely different. But we can manifest an enhanced experience of focus the same way that we manifest anything else.
Okay.
What would the feeling be like if I knew that I had a powerful focus, if I knew that my concentration was supreme?
Okay. Okay. And my last question is, what are ways to strengthen your visualization?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So this is one that I've studied.
Yeah.
Meaning I'm going to give you an answer that kind of comes from, like, I've read books about this. I've listened to people talk about this. I've done workshops, courses, that type of stuff about visualization. So strengthening the visualization, a big part of it comes down to practice. It's like an obvious answer, but how do I practice strengthening visualization? So one thing that I do.
Okay.
I practice with geometric shapes.
Okay.
And I practice drawing the geometry in my imagination. So I close my eyes, and a lot of times I'll have it in my hands, something like this. This is like a 3D printed dodecahedron. My partner has all of the platonic solids in copper wire, made beautifully. And so I'll take one of those platonic solids and I'll hold it in my hand and I'll examine it until I really get an idea of what it looks like. And then I close my eyes, and in my imagination, I recreate it.
Okay.
Right. And then if I feel like the image gets fuzzy or loose or whatever, I'll open my eyes and I'll gaze again, and then I'll close my eyes and I'll recreate it. And I do this a lot of times as I'm starting a meditation because it helps me focus.
Right.
It kind of ties in your earlier question.
Exactly.
So it's activating my imaginal, my visualization skills. And then it's also teaching me to focus. And then I'm going to pass along one additional little tip, in part because it's fun. It came from a psychic teacher. I took a course on psychic abilities, like developing psychic abilities. And this particular teacher teaches that high percentage dark chocolate has specific ingredients in it, minerals and other alkaloids that support the visualization centers of our brain from a nutrition standpoint.
Okay.
Maybe that's a permission slip.
Right.
Sometimes permission slips can be helpful. So, maybe have a bite of high, content dark chocolate
Right.
and then go into the silence and do your visualization.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. Because my belief level, right, is like really, really strong. So
Yes.
I can incorporate the focus and the visualization. I mean, like, I'm going to be awesome.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Orlena, for that contribution. Well,
Hi, just a quick question to add on to what you just
yeah, go
told
ahead.
Orlena,
Yes.
about the visualization. You
Yes.
mentioned the shapes.
Yes.
Does that also apply to when you're visualizing money? You know how when they say look at yourself counting money, like in imagination.
Mhm.
So this thing about studying the shapes. So does that also work with studying money and how it looks like and then recreating it?
Yes, you can absolutely do it with money. So with money, there's, the texture of the paper, right? There's the texture of the paper. It's not, smooth. There's detail to it. Obviously, our money, depending on what country you're in, always has imagery on it. So you could get really, really clear on that. And then, the act of counting is like a very common thing. You hear the crackle of it. You're like, it's moving through your hands. And then Neville also talks about the smell of money. I think our newer bills smell different than what bills smelled like when he was doing, his classes, but they definitely have a smell. So that's another way that you can kind of get clear about the feeling of that object in imagination.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Paula, that's you. Go ahead.
So when I'm in the state akin to sleep, it's really easy, really frequent for me to slip too close to actual sleep. And I realize that it's happening because I'm going along with my scene, and all of a sudden I realize that I've lost control of my scene and it's turned into something that would be a dream.
Yes.
And then like I can pull it back and I start doing it again, but it happens really easily. And so I start feeling like I'm doing a bad job of it. I'm messing up and I just get really frustrated because I feel like I'm not doing this right. Is
Okay.
there a trick for not letting that go that far?
Do you lay all the way down flat or are you reclined?
No, I'm like reclining on the couch or something. I'm not lying on the bed.
Okay, I would try sitting up just a little bit, still
Okay.
super relaxed and comfortable, maybe use pillows, but
Yeah.
a slight incline might help a little bit with retaining the control of your attention. Do you
Okay.
use any type of track, any type of, headphones, audio, anything?
No, no, I don't like I, I don't like to not be able to hear what's going on around me just in case there's some kind of an emergency or something.
Okay, that makes
Are
sense.
you
Yeah,
are you but wouldn't listening to an audio make me more likely to go to sleep?
depends on the audio. So what I like the kind of, we've talked about this in the mastermind. It's kind of a drone sound that doesn't change a whole lot. It helps you, it can help focus. And then every so often there'll be these little different noises that aren't jarring, but they're different. And so it's like this in my experience, it's this very subtle cue to come back to control of attention in case I slip a little bit. Right. So it's like I'm
Oh,
in
okay.
literally in the zone. I'm hearing the drone of the sound of whatever track I'm listening to. And then every once in a while there's this other little, chime or something. And so it's like this subtle reminder, like, hey, if I slipped or am I still here? And if I have slipped and I hear that other sound, it's like, okay, hold on, let me come back into my focus of attention.
Okay. I could probably listen to something like that just like from my phone so that I can still respond to the world if I
Even
had to.
in the space around you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, something, and you can find, I published a list of tracks in the mastermind, but you can find you have to do what works for you, what feels right. I
Yeah.
think simpler is better. You don't want over composed music. You want to keep it pretty simple.
Oh,
Uh,
it can't be actual music
it shouldn't be, in
or
my opinion.
that'll take all my attention.
Okay, yeah, because you're a musical person. I get that. Yeah, it can't be music. I would go for just something that has kind of that sustained drone to like help
Yeah.
you focus. And then
Yeah.
every once in a while, little noises to kind of bring you back into your center should you slip a little.
Okay.
And then I just have to say, because of the nature of what this is, imagine the feeling of being really good at doing this. And maybe start there before you sit down to practice. What would the feeling be like if you were really good at doing this? If you were really good at this practice of imagination, because we know how important it is. So what skill could be more important to master than
Yeah.
this? So find the feeling of mastery of this skill.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Monica, I see you hopped on here. Did you have something? Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Josiah, and thank you so much. This was valuable. One thing that I sometimes, maybe just to kind of comment on you mentioning choosing a scene and the fine tuning of that, maybe while you're in the fourth dimension. I find like I try to think really hard about choosing the right scene that matches the wish fulfilled, but I sometimes feel like I might waver in finding that right scene to
Mhm.
match.
Mhm.
So do you have any advice on like, is it better to just really get into that relaxation mode and allow it to come to you while you're in the fourth dimension, or should you choose it in advance of getting into that state?
That's a good question. I think you can really you can do either. You're asking for what a best practice is.
Yeah.
What I'm present to in this moment is there somebody that you share good news with in your life?
Yes.
Spouse, child. I'm articulating this for the audience, right? So like just to kind of help us find it. If there is, then that can almost be like a cheat code to this whole thing. Because if that positive thing happened in your life, you would definitely tell them, right? So like if that's like something that is very likely to occur after you get your promotion, or after, this happens or that happens, or, whatever, if you're very likely to tell this person, then they're very likely to be happy for you. And so like in terms of choosing the right scene, like I said, it can be, if it feels right to you, it can be kind of a cheat code for choosing the right scene, because this is a person that you love and loves you back. You know that they're going to be happy for you. And if you love them and you talk to them frequently, you probably know what their voice sounds like. Obviously, if hearing is the modality you want to go with, then that can be a simplification of this process. You can simply hear yourself tell them and then hear them respond back, as clearly as possible in your mind's eye, how happy they are for you, that this is now done and that it's a fact. So that's one thing that comes to mind. To answer, so I just wanted to kind of share the cheat code, but to kind of respond to your other question, what you can do is go into the silence, into the fourth dimension, experience the event and kind of live through it, and then kind of see, from that perspective, what types of things happen, and then choose one scene. And then in the future, when you come back to this one scene, focus on that one thing that was kind of discovered while you were in that meditative state. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
One thing to kind of comment, sometimes I feel like scenes can also imply multiple things.
Very
So like a
true.
congratulations, that can mean a promotion, that can mean a new job, that can mean a new investment. So I also, and I just kind of thinking about that, sometimes I feel like scenes can mean multiple things in our manifestations. And how does that end up bringing on the specific thing you desire?
So being as specific as possible is helpful, is definitely helpful. I'm looking for an example that I can show you. Okay. So there we go. All right. So I'm going to give an example. So there is something that is super specific. There is something, you just have to find it. So I'm going to give you an example. So there's a friend of mine who called me on the phone and said that she wanted her passports. I shared this in the mastermind already, but I'm going to share it publicly on YouTube. She wanted her passports and all the reasons why it couldn't happen, right? So after the phone call was done, what did I do? I imagined that my friend received her passports for herself and for her son. And so the question was, what would naturally imply that this was fulfilled? Well, she had shared the desire with me. And so I knew that she would also share with me the success when she had the passports. I was like, well, what would she do? She would send me a picture of the passports to say, hey, I got the passport. So what did I do? In my mind's eye, my imagination, I picked up my phone and I opened up the chat thread with this person, and I imagined seeing that she had sent me a photo of 2 passports. And short amount of time later, I got exactly that photo on my phone. Okay, it's hard to confuse that with anything else, right? So it's like that. That's exactly what would imply exactly the fulfillment, because they're in hand. So it can take a little bit of practice, like what exactly would imply this, because like you're saying, some things can be a little bit more abstract or have multiple meanings. What exactly would imply it? It is important to find that and then focus on that as a scene.
Thank you, Josiah.
You're welcome. Thank you, Monica. I hope that was helpful. Okay. Any other comments from the Zoom room? Right. Awesome. Okay, so we end here on the compelling call to practice. This is like, we have to be doers and not hearers only. That's the whole point of the mystery school is to practice these things. So practice what we've talked about here today. Practice the state akin to sleep, that portal state of awareness. Practice the telephone technique, hearing what you want to hear when someone tells you that they're in a place of need or lack or want. Finish the conversation, and then in the silence, hear a new conversation that implies that it is done. Same characters, rewrite the scene, right? It's still their voice, but they're telling you that they have what they desire. And that's how we make these ideas real and alive in our lives. Members of the channel Mastermind, I'm inviting you now to go ahead and hop in the Zoom room. We're going to close the YouTube live stream and have a short Zoom session with just the Mastermind members. So go ahead and hop into the Zoom room. And for all of you on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us live. And I look forward to continuing this conversation next week. And until then, imagine wisely, my friends, and we will see you all in the next.